Be'ez Hashem Yisboch, we begin Perek Abba the 14th Perek in the Rambam's Hilchos Issurei Biah, the laws of forbidden relationships in the Sefer Kedusha. We continue the theme of the previous Perek discussing the laws of converts, specifically accepting converts, and also their laws as it relates to the halachas of arayas of forbidden relationships. So the Rambam first opens up in the order of how we go ahead with the conversion process. Halacha Aleph. Ketzad Makam Ger Tzedek, how do we receive a righteous convert? So, when an individual comes to convert from the Gentiles, and they inspect after him, as we said in the previous paragraph, they don't find any ulterior motive. So they say to him as follows: what did you see fit to convert to the Jewish people? Don't you know that the Jewish people in these days and these times in exile, the Vuyim are afflicted, with the Chufim and crushed, and Mesuchafim and subjugated, and Terafim and strained, and all types of afflictions coming on Jewish people. Imam Afri says, yeah, I know. And I'm not worthy. If only I would be worthy to be part of the Jewish people. We immediately accept that person as a ger. Halacha based. Now, we let him know the primary fundamental principles of the Jewish faith. Which is the unity of God. Everything is Hashem. The Isra avodah zarah and the prohibition of idolatry. And we're lengthy in this idea to explain to him so that he knows, he understands the unity of God, which is the primary idea about how the world runs. Now, Umedina said mitzvahs kalas. You also let him know a little bit of some of the easy mitzvahs, a little bit of some of the more difficult mitzvahs. But we're not lengthy in that topic. And we let him know avoin leket, the sin of leket, which is that when a person is harvesting and cutting the grain and some stalks fall down, you have to leave it for the poor. Shikha, that which is when someone is taking bundles and if he gets one bundle in the field, you're not allowed to take it. Upeya, which is when someone is going and harvesting the field, he should leave over a corner and not harvest that and leave it over for the poor. Umaiser Sheni, and the second type, which seems like that the word should say Umaiser Ani, which is in the same category of the tithes, which are in the 3rd and 6th year of the Shemitah cycle, they go to the poor people. Umedina say Anshin Shal Mitzvahs, and we let him know the punishment of mitzvahs. As Ram says, Kate said, how so? They tell him like this: every day you should know, until you didn't come to this faith, if you ate chaylev, which are certain fats in the animal which are prohibited to the Jewish people, you wouldn't get any punishment of karas, which is dying young and children dying and a few other things. You get cut off. If you would desecrate the Sabbath, you wouldn't get a punishment about being stoned to death. Now, this guy, now that you convert, eat those forbidden fats, you get a punishment of karas. If you desecrate the Shabbos, you get a punishment of being stoned. Now, but they don't increase mentioning all these punishments, and they don't go through all the specific particulars regarding the subcategories and specifics of these punishments. Because that might cause to chase him away. And to turn them away from going to the good path to go onto the bad path. Because in the beginning, you don't draw a person, rather with words of willingness and of soft words. Like it says in Hosea, with the ropes of man I will draw him, and then with cords of love. Now, halacha gimel. It's just like we notify him all the punishments of the commandments if he doesn't keep them. So do we let him know the reward of the commandments? We let him know by doing these mitzvahs to the life of the world to come. There's no totally righteous person, only a person of wisdom that does these mitzvahs and who knows these mitzvahs intimately. They tell him, you should know that the world to come is only hidden away for the righteous. After the Jewish people. And this that you see, that the Jewish people are in pain in this world, because the good is hidden away for them, because the Jewish people cannot accept the abundance of good in this world like the nations of the world, because that might cause their hearts to become elevated, to become arrogant, and then they'll stray. And then they lose the reward of the world to come. Like it says the pasuk in the Barim, Yeshurun is one of the names of Klal Yisrael, that they become fat and become arrogant, and then they rebel against God. So therefore, that's why the Jewish people are not on top of the world in this world. Now, on the other end, halacha hey, but neither does God bring them too much punishment. They said the Jewish people should not be wiped off from this world. Rather, all the other nations of the world, they perish. The Jewish people remain standing. and we're lengthy about these concepts, so that they feel cherished by joining the Jewish people. Now, if he retracts, doesn't want to accept becoming a Jew anymore. So he goes on his way and he goes back to being what he was up until this point. Now, if he accepts, we don't delay performing the mitzvah of having him become a Jew. We circumcise him right away. Now, if he was already circumcised, so you draw a little bit of the blood of the covenant, and you wait until he has a full recovery, and then, so that the water doesn't injure him, then we taivel him in the mikveh after that. And we have 3 people standing over there when he's doing the tefillah in the mikveh. Mitzvahs kalas or mitzvahs chamuras, and they let him know a little bit of the easy mitzvahs, a little bit of the more difficult mitzvahs a second time. When he's there standing in the water. Now, if she was a woman, so it's women that they take care of the procedure of having her go into the water of the mikveh up until her neck, and the judge on the outside. And they let her know a little bit of the easy mitzvahs and of the difficult mitzvahs. She's sitting there in the water. And then she dips in front of them. And they turn their face around and they leave so they shouldn't see her when she's coming out of the waters of the mikveh. Now, halacha zayin, up until now we spoke about a ger tzedek, a fully righteous convert becomes like a regular Yisrael. Then there's a concept known as ger toishav. Says the Rambam, Ezehu ger toishav, what's considered the resident convert? So, Zed Goy, this is a Gentile, who accepts not to worship idolatry, with all the other 7 commandments that a non-Jew is commanded to fulfill. But he's not circumcised, he's not taiveling in the mikveh. He's just keeping the 7 no-hide laws. So they accept him as a ger toishav. That's what's known as from the pious of the nations of the world. Now, why is it called the ger that toishav? Because it's permitted to have him dwell amongst us in Eretz Yisrael, like we explained. That's why it's not a real ger tzedek, but he's a ger who sojourns, lives toishav as a dweller amongst us. Now, but the Rambam says but we don't accept this procedure and this designation of the title of ger toishav only in the days when the yovel cycle is applicable, which the Rabbi contests that. But in these days where we don't have the Shemitah and the Yebel, we don't have the Yebel, which has certain unique halachas of avodim going back and so on and so forth, and when the majority of Jewish people are there, so therefore if a Gentile comes and accepts the whole Torah, except for one particular of the Jewish law, which is definitely more than what we said a ger toishav has to, but not enough a ger tzedek has to accept everything, so we don't accept them again because we don't have the laws of ger tzedek, says the Rambam, in today's times. Now, halacha tes, a related type of a person, is a slave that's purchased from a non-Jew. Says the Rambam, a slave is purchased from a non-Jew, which, since he's not coming by himself, as a regular ger is, so we don't tell him, as we said regarding a ger who's coming to join the Jewish people on his own initiative, we don't tell him, Mori Isa Shabasa, or what you see fit that you're coming, because this is not on his own, he's being sold as a slave to a Jewish person. Rather, we tell him, we know why he's coming, he's sold to the Jewish people, but we say, is it your desire to enter into the slaves of Jewish people, and to be from the upstanding ones, which he has like a quasi state of a Jewish person, he has the commandments like what a Jewish woman has, or not? So Imratza, if he's willing, so Medin like Ikar Adas, we'll let him know the primary principles of the Jewish faith. We'll mix some of the easy mitzvahs, some of the difficult mitzvahs, their punishment, their reward. Like we said, as we notify the convert. We taivel him in the mikvah like a ger. We let him know about the mitzvahs when he's in the water. Now, if he doesn't want to accept this, I don't want to accept these Jewish laws. So we're busy with him for 12 months, meaning seeing how it's going to turn out. But and ultimately you sell him to a non-Jew, to a Gentile. You can't keep him, who he doesn't want to accept the status of Ebed Yisrael, to the Jewish mitzvahs, more than that period of 12 months. Now, but if originally the stipulation was they made up that we're not going to circumcise him, we're not going to taivel him, rather he'll be like the resident convert. Oh, then then you're allowed to sustain him in his work, his slavery, as a ger toishav, and but still, as we said, the whole ger toishav is almost man yebel. So such a slave also can only be maintained to be in that status of a ger toishav if he's not accepting to be like an Ebed Yisrael, which is more of a Jew than that, only at the time when the yebel cycle is working in the Jewish law. Now in halacha Yud, the Rambam continues regarding now regarding the Isser of Arayis as applies to non-Jews and regarding when they convert and become ger. So the Rambam here is discussing in the next few halachas a few different types of arayis. There are those which are unrelated arayis, which has nothing to do with being related, which is a married woman, a nida, homosexuality, which is another male, an animal, bestiality. So all those are forbidden to a non-Jew just like a Jew, except for nida, which they don't have those halachas. Then you have blood relatives, which are 7, which are also permitted to a non-Jew, except for his mother and his maternal sister, which him and the sister have the same mother. Then you have in-laws, which are relatives that are forbidden to him because of his marriage to his wife, which are all permitted to a Gentile. And then you have his relatives' wives, which are 4 by the Jewish people, which all permitted to Gentiles except for his father's wife. So it comes out biblically, the arayos that are forbidden to Jewish people are 22, and only 6 of them are forbidden to a Gentile. Now, regarding Gerim, it gets a little more complicated. Those that were forbidden to him as a non-Jew, like his mother or his mother's sister, his maternal sister, those are rabbinically forbidden to him. Why they're rabbinically forbidden to him? Although when he converts, they're not really related to him, from the fact that they shouldn't say, when I was not Jewish, I had more severe laws than I am right now. So even if he marries them prohibitedly, which he's not allowed to when he's not Jewish, when he converts, we separate him from, let's say, his mother and his maternal sister. Now, regarding arayos that were permitted to him when he was a non-Jew, are rabbinically forbidden to him, from the reason that people shouldn't make a mistake and say, he's Jewish, so it looks maybe Jewish people are also permitted in these types of arayos. But regarding relatives that are paternally related to him, meaning that he had from his father's side, they're Rabbanan not goyzer, because no one's going to say he came from a Gedush Chamur, Gedush Kala, because you see that his maternal relatives are forbidden. And they're also not going to say, it must be that by Jews it's permitted, because everybody knows that there's no patrilineal descent that there's no relation between the father and his Gentile son. So it comes out that the arayos that are forbidden to get rabbinically are 9. 2 of them because that they shouldn't say, they came from Kedusha Chamur, Kedusha Kala, which is his mother and his maternal sister. And 7, that people shouldn't think that the same thing would be permitted by a regular Jewish person. With that in mind, the Rambam says like this. He says, Hagoyim, the Gentiles, they have no prohibitions regarding arayos, Ella, when they do have. It's one of the 7 Noahide laws, but Ella Imoy, but the problem would be having relation with a mother, and the Eshes of his father's wife, and his maternal sister, they have the same mother. The Eshes Ish, a married woman, the Zachar, and having relation with another man, Behema, and with an animal, like we'll be explaining the laws of the kings and their wars in Perek Tes Halacha. Avashar, but all other forbidden relationships that a Jew has, are permitted for non-Jews. Now, Halacha Yidaf, that's regarding when he's a non-Jew and he's a Gentile. Now, Goish Shenizgayer, a Gentile that converts, or the equivalent, which is an Eved, a slave when he's freed, he's like a child that's born or reborn. And so therefore, any relative that he had when he was a Gentile, like Sheba when he was a slave, not really related to him anymore. He's like a new person. Then this guy who behem, now if him and them convert, he's not liable on anyone in them biblically as an Erva because we're not related, although we're blood relatives, but we're considered like newborn children. Now, Allah Yid Beis. Din Torah, according to biblical law, Shemutu l'goy, or the Gersa should be to a ger, that it's permitted for a convert, She'isi imoy achayse me'imoy, she'nizkairu. So based on what we said, according to biblical law, that like newborn people, although they were related, they were relatives when not Jewish, but when you're Jewish, like a new person, he's allowed to marry his mother or his maternal sister when they convert. Now, but the sages, they said it's forbidden. As we mentioned before, Shlomo said they shouldn't say, we obviously are coming from a more severe sanctity as a Gentile to a lighter sanctity, because yesterday, meaning before he converted, this was forbidden for him to marry his mother and his sister. But today I'm allowed to. So rabbinically they made it forbidden. And so too, if a convert has relations with his mother or sister, and the woman, his mother or sister, are still Gentiles, it's like having relations with a non-Jewish woman, which would be rabbinically forbidden to a Jew. Now, how is the law of converts regarding the forbidden relationships that are because of being a relative. So says the Rambam, if he was married when he was a Gentile, li'imai to his mother, or to his maternal sister, which was an ervatim even as a non-Jew, as a Gentile. Then this guy, now the two of them, they convert. So we separate them, like we explained in the previous halacha, where rabbinically it's forbidden. Biblically, they're like two unrelated people. Rabbinically, it's forbidden, so that they shouldn't say, "Oh, we originally when we were Gentile, it was forbidden, and now it's permitted." Now, the Maya Nasal L'Sha'arai is now if he was married to some other erva, then this guy who ve'ishtoi and him and his wife convert. So we don't separate them. Meaning, it's not similar to the case of when he was married to his mother or his maternal sister, because there the reason is, they're going to say we came from a kedusha kala, so we separate them. But all other rights, we're not concerned with them because people see that obviously it's not a kedusha kala, because we know his mother and his maternal sister are forbidden. Rather, they're going to say that after that they accept the yoke of the Torah, it's like a new halacha, and therefore, although they were arayas, but now they're permitted to be married. Ger also b'sheh ha'ayim achash in this guy. However, a convert is forbidden in his maternal relatives. Achash in this guy, meaning that he has from his mother's side after he converts. That's in the that's because of rabbinic law. And as we mentioned before, umuta b'sheh av, but he's permitted in his paternal relatives, even his father's wife, which was forbidden to him as a non-Jew, because only by arayis that don't have a paternal element, we're concerned that people can make a mistake and say, by a Jewish person it's also permitted, which is the other reason why we make rabbinic prohibitions on a ger. But regarding paternal relatives that's from his father's side, no one's going to make a mistake. Everyone knows that a guy has no relationship to the seed of his father. And therefore, even though it's a well-known definite thing that this is a relative from his father's side, let's say that it's twins. Where it's obviously well known that obviously the father was the same father of this because they were twins. Even so, they did not make a gzeira, the Rabbanan, on the paternal relatives, as we mentioned. Therefore, a ger comes allowed to marry the wife of his paternal brother. He's also allowed to marry the wife of his uncle, of his father's brother. He can even marry his father's wife, or his son's wife. Again, because paternally, whether going up or down, there's no relationship. And even if she got married to his brother, or to his father, or to his father's brother, or to his son, which are the cases we mentioned, Achash and Gairu, even though everyone's Jewish, and they got married after they were Jewish, doesn't make a difference. We're not related. Even though we're all Jewish and brothers and family, he can marry his father's wife, brother's wife, whatever it is, after they're divorced. So too, his mother's sister, it's his mother's paternal sister, again, since it's paternal, and his own paternal sister, ubitish and his gaira, and his daughter that converted, again, muteris loy is going to be permitted to him. But he cannot marry, not his maternal sister, because that's what we said is forbidden. And neither could he marry his mother's maternal sister. And neither could he marry his maternal brother's wife, meaning that she married his maternal brother after his maternal brother converted. Because but actually if his brother married her when he was a Gentile, actually then Harizim Materis Loy, then she would be permitted to him. Halach Yadal. Shnei Achim Ta'imim, two twin brothers. That they were conceived when the mother had not yet converted, called not in sanctity. So he doesn't Megdusha, but when she was pregnant with these twins is when she converted, then there would be a liability of marrying his brother's wife as a Jewish brother's wife. Halachat Ezvav. Hanoitzi Giyeris Uvita Giyeris. Someone marries a female convert and her daughter that converted, or two maternal sisters. So Allah is Yeshim Achzim. He remains married with one of them. Umakar Shashni has to divorce the other one, which although biblically they're unrelated because they're like converts, but rabbinically not married to both of them because we shouldn't confuse that by Jewish people, because it looks like a regular Jew, are also allowed to marry a mother, daughter, or two sisters. Now, but let's say Nasi Giyeris from Mesa. Let's say he married a female convert and she died. Then he's allowed to marry her mother or her daughter. Because, as we said, this is only a rabbinic decree, and they only made it when they were alive, because then it looks like at the same time, but if it's not the same time, then they didn't make this decree. Now, however, a person is allowed to marry two paternal sisters. Like we said, they didn't make this gezerah by paternal relatives, like we explained in Halach Yud Gimel. Halacha design. Now, Hashni is cool in all secondary arayas, which the Rambam went through in Hilchos and Perek Aleph. They didn't make those gezeres at all, which anyways is a gezer. We're not going to make a gezer like gezer. They didn't make this rabbinic decree by converts. Lafikach, therefore, muta hager, so it's permitted for the ger, lisa im imoy, to marry his mother's mother, v'noisad giyaris, and the aim, and the ger should be aim ima, and he's allowed to marry a convert and her mother's mother, because actually mother's mother is actually a biblical violation. Evas basbita, or his daughter's daughter, and all the secondary arayas are not forbidden to a ger. Now, Lochid Zan Ram continues regarding this halacha of isarayas as they apply, as the Ram keeps comparing gerim and avodim and shvachis and maidservants. However, it says Ram and Halachid Zan, however, mutalisa imek shu eved. A slave is allowed to marry his mother when he's a slave. You have to say he's allowed to marry his daughter, and his sister, which obviously a mother is more severe. He's allowed to marry them all the kids, but all things like that. Now, what's the reason for this? And because even for a Gentile it's forbidden. No, because when it comes to Ebed, he's not considered as a Gentile anymore. And therefore the Arais are forbidden on Gentiles, not forbidden on him. But at the same time, he's not yet a full-fledged Jew. That should be forbidden on him, the Arais, not forbidden on Gerim. So he actually gets the best of both in that way, and it's actually permitted to his mother and daughter and sister. Now, Allah Yitches, but says Rambam, it seems to me, but if the slave has relations with another male or with an animal, then they're both going to be killed. Because these are objective isurim that is forbidden to everyone to do such a thing, and that would be forbidden even for a slave, and he would be executed. Allah Yitches. Slaves that are freed, they're like converts. Kol shas legem, whatever is forbidden for a convert, aslam is forbidden for them. Chalmut legem, whatever is permitted for converts, mutlam is permitted for them. Now, nice adam shevchasel abde. A person could give his maidservant to his slave for relations, or to his friend's slave. And moreover, initially one could go ahead and give his maidservant to be designated for two slaves. And they don't need anything to permit that. They're just like animals and cattle in that way. The and the maidservant that's designated for this slave, or not designated, it's all the same thing. Because there's no halacha of, so to speak, marriage, which then it makes a woman forbidden to another man as a married woman. El Yisrael, it's only for Jewish people, or for one non-Jew, for al-goyim, for other non-Jews, meaning to say that a non-Jew is forbidden to another married non-Jewish woman. But not for slaves, meaning the wife of a slave is not a problem alavodim to make another slave liable for having relations with the woman that's designated to a different slave. And neither is it a problem for the wife of a slave al Yisrael on the Jewish man. If a Jewish man has relations with the wife of a slave, he's going to be exempt. In contrast, actually, a Gentile that has relations with the wife of a slave actually would be liable.